Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
I said that in the form of a question. I don't know who I am anymore. I've seemed to have lost myself in the abyss, and Miro is going to redeem me.
Oh no.
Or Rusev, rather. Rusev is back and he's going to redeem me. Which, whenever he gets here, means I might wake up in the hospital. I don't know. Or as some would call it, a medical facility. This is episode 150, guys. We made it. We made it. Whoever you are that listens to this, both of you, we made it. So I did not think that we were going to get this far when we started this podcast 3 years ago. So it is super cool to see. And the channel has, we don't have a bajillion subscribers yet. We have 124, 125. But that is still really cool. We want to get to 500 so that we could start monetizing this shit and, try to make money, try to get into something, try to get t-shirts and stuff like that. But doesn't really matter. You folks who we normally like to berate, we of course do it in jest. Thanks for paying attention. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking this stuff out. And thank you for just hitting that stupid subscribe button that nobody likes. Whether or not you even come back, that's fine. Thanks for being subscribed. And for the people who comment on things, thank you. That's pretty damn cool. You're helping us get seen. But yeah, that's all that I got to say about that, because we have got a really big show lined up for you for 150. And we hadn't done a video game in a long time. And I figured, for a big milestone one, why don't we just do the best fighting game of all time?
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat, baby.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, that's right. If you don't know what this show is, this is Why Does This Exist? We're a podcast that talks about weird stuff in pop culture. Anything that was just kind of out there that just had some that had a really interesting effect on pop culture, we try to discuss it. If you want to check out any of the other stuff that we've done, you can go back in time and check out anything that you want. We started with Heil Honey, I'm Home, and we have gone from there to thrash metal to Kingdom Hearts to pro wrestling stuff to Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, for the 150th time, that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. Tell the people about Mortal Kombat, Rob.
Mortal Kombat!
Yes! There we go. All right, take it away, Maestro.
Well, how do you even start with Mortal Kombat? It's probably... I don't know if it's the most popular fighting game of all time, but it's definitely up there. When you list fighting games, Mortal Kombat is definitely in the top 3, probably, alongside Street Fighter and Tekken. Probably, I would say are the big 3.
And then I would say, just the fan favorite is probably Marvel versus Capcom 2.
Yeah, but you could argue that could be part of the Street Fighter continuity a little bit because it
You
kind of
could.
spawned out of Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Because it actually started out originally as Marvel versus Street Fighter,
Yes.
and they just expanded it to Marvel versus Capcom.
For another
But
day.
yeah, and while Marvel vs. Capcom is very popular, it really doesn't compare to the big three, I would say, which again is Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and Tekken. So Mortal Kombat, the first game came out way back in 1992.
Wow.
Yeah,
Who won the World Series that year?
good
You
question.
don't you don't have to answer that question. That's something for somebody in the comments to feed us that fun fact. We'll give
Yeah,
you guys some homework
so
or CTA as the marketing folks would call it.
it's hard to put into words how iconic Mortal Kombat is, not just as a fighting game, but in video game history in general. Uh, it's been going strong for 33 years now, the series. And when it first came on, it was one of the games that was directly responsible for the ESRB being created. Uh,
Mhm.
because of the extreme amount of violence in it, specifically Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 really pushed the envelope for video game violence back in the day. And again, was there was a huge controversy with it because it hadn't really been, if you're going back to the early 90s, there wasn't really a lot of violent video games. You had like Doom, which had just come out, but that was a DOS game, so not a lot of kids played that. It was more, because again, we're going back to the early 90s where kids really didn't play on the computer that much. It was more, uh, college age kids and adults that were playing on PC. So Mortal Kombat was probably the most violent game that ever came to a home console, but at that time, you had some stuff on NES, and you could even argue there was some kind of violent stuff on Atari or controversial stuff on Atari, but they were so pixelated and so lo-fi that you couldn't really even see what was going on. Whereas Mortal Kombat really was the first time that there was an extreme amount of violence, and it was right in your face and visible.
Yeah.
From the blood to the fatalities, to the ability to knock people off the stage into a pit of spikes where they got impaled.
It's the novelty and the shock value because there was just nothing around there like that.
Yeah. And growing up in the 90s, Mortal Kombat was one of those games that you tried to, you went to a friend's house to play it or something, and you didn't want to tell your parents about it because they would probably like yell at you or tell you, oh, you can't play that anymore because it's too violent.
Yes, this is when they still had the power.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those games that like I would go back and say, along with Turok and Doom 64, it's one of those games where I definitely shouldn't have been playing it at that age, but I was.
Yeah. I think
So
we all did. I mean,
oh
looking
yeah.
back when you go back and play it now, of course, it's hilarious to think that people would really get riled up over this stuff, but at that
Mm-hmm.
time, this was the best you could get graphically.
Yeah.
So, just them taking as much of this them doing as much as they could with this and really pushing the console to its limits, the let alone the audience's
Yeah.
like thirst for violence that they probably didn't even know that they had at this point. There was very little. There was a small. The bloodlust bar was very low, and this squirted a fountain over the top.
Yeah. I think another reason
Another
why it was considered more violent, where because other games previously everything was drawn. Mortal Kombat was one of the first games that popularized the use of direct motion capture, where they actually used real actors playing the characters and had them do all the different moves and photographed it and then used that as the sprites.
Yes,
So
they pretty much just took a bunch of Chicago actors and that had martial arts qualifications, and they just said, "Hey, could you just throw a kick?"
yeah.
And they would just tape it, and they would just film it or mocap it the best that they could with that, and then they would just take him there.
Hmm.
It was more or less just it was more or less just taking pictures versus as much video, and it was almost just it was similar to animation the way
Yeah.
that they were doing it at the time, where you just kind of flip pages and you get the motion that way.
Yeah.
But interesting point was that this game was almost not called Mortal Kombat. It was going to be called, and I don't even know if the whole franchise would have even taken off if they didn't call it Mortal Kombat,
Yeah.
because they were thinking of a bunch of different names for it, and they were going to go with Fatality as one of them. And there was a guy who was in the mailroom or something like that, or he was just dropping stuff off. It was like a postal worker or something,
Hmm.
and or a, or he might have been a friend of Ed Boon and John Tobias, and we'll talk about those dudes later. That and they just he stopped by the studio, and by studio it was probably just a tiny office space where. And he just said, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're working on this game. What is it? Oh, it's a fighting game. What's it called? I don't know. We don't really have a name, but we were thinking this one, that one. Fatality was one of them. Well, what is it? Oh, it's these guys who fight to the death. For control for the fate of the world. Oh, and the guy would just basically flat out said, "Why don't you just call it Mortal Kombat?"
Yeah.
And that's just how they named it. It was there. It's not deep. Um, and then I like how over time they built a whole bunch of lore out of it, and we can get to that, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But it just started as a little Chicago studio, and the idea that was originally pitched was a video game based off of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Jean-Claude Van Damme would have starred in the game, and it would have been a fighting game where they used his model
Mm.
and everything. And he either had a scheduling conflict or he just looked at it and just said, "No, I don't think I want to do this." Whatever it was. And then they based Johnny Cage off of Jean-Claude Van Damme from Bloodsport, and they gave him the prick Hollywood actor gimmick.
Huh. Interestingly enough, Jean Claude Van Damme would go on to star as Guile in Street Fighter the movie.
Yes, which I wonder if that was one of the reasons why he did it, is just to
Yeah.
kind of show these Mortal Kombat guys who who ended up making a caricature out of him. I
Yeah.
bet you he was pissed when he saw that. But I mean, the other thing, speaking of fatalities, is I think one of the funniest things is how the fatality was discovered, because this was a time where the only thing that you had were the gaming magazines.
Hmm.
And if the gaming magazines didn't know, then you you found it out by accident. And if you found out by accident, you had to remember exactly what you did, or nobody would believe you, because you would just run to the schoolyard and you would tell everybody, "Guys, I did this thing and his head exploded." Cool. How did you do it? I don't know, but you want to come over after school and we can try? And then if they didn't do it, then you didn't believe them, and you went off saying, "Yeah," and then you'd go to the schoolyard like the next day and you just say something, you'd be talking to somebody else and you say, "Yeah, I went over to Timmy's house and he was talking about that video game thing where he made the guy's head blow up, but we tried for a bunch of hours and couldn't do it. So I don't think it's real." And then somebody else would eavesdrop and say, "No, that thing is totally real. I saw my brother do it. I don't know what he did, but I know he did it." And then the
Yeah.
minute that gets in, then it's like, maybe it's real. And then you'd find other people who'd either say that they'd take a side, and then eventually you would find somebody who figured it out, and you'd go to their house and watch them do it, and then everybody would go back to Timmy and say, "We're so sorry that we didn't believe you.
Yeah.
Next time it'll be different. Now we know now we know you're a credible source, Tim." And you'd let him hang out again with you. He
Well,
would be banned. He would come back from exile.
I remember the big
But
thing too was when Mortal Kombat 2 was on Super Nintendo. Nintendo was not a fan of the extreme violence, so they had to hide the blood behind a
right,
cheat code. And that was like a big thing. If someone knew the cheat code to get the blood activated in this Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat, that was like the big rumor around the playground,
right. Um, but the way that fatalities were first discovered when they were doing the arcade testing in a little, in a little rinky-dink arcade in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
they just put the PR thing was that they just dropped the arcade in there, and they just told the guy, "Hey, we need," like, whoever was running the show, they were just like, "Hey, can you get people to play this? We just want people to." This was their play testing. Was they just dropped the arcade in there and they said, "Hey, can you direct people towards this game?" And eventually, it started drawing a crowd. And Ed Boon and John Tobias were right there, standing there, watching this as their focus testing, I guess you could call it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, being a primitive time, nobody knew or cared what the game developers looked like. They probably just assumed that they would be the guys in the suits with the fancy haircuts.
Yeah.
And they were just standing right there, just asking them little questions, but not too many. And somebody figured, some kid figured out how to do a fatality on the first night, and they just looked at each other like, shit. We did not want people to find out about this. Like, they wanted to wait until it got onto consoles, and then it would kind of leak on its own. And it just happened one night. One kid figured out how to do it, and but he didn't know what he did. So he told other people, and he couldn't recreate it. So nobody believed him. And then he turned to John Tobias and Ed Boon because they saw him do it, and
Mm-hmm.
he just said, "You guys saw it happen, right? You total like tell these guys that I'm not lying." And they just flat out gaslit him and just said, "No, that didn't happen." Like, why are you lying to everybody? So that's one of my favorite stories about the early days of this game. But Ed Boon and John Tobias obviously are the co-creators of Mortal Kombat,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just super fans of kung fu movies and horror movies and all this stuff. And we talked about this on the Big Trouble in Little China episode, that the Thunder gods, that was
Thunder.
Thunder was the inspiration for Raiden
Yes.
directly,
Yeah.
down to the costume and everything.
Yep.
Obviously, Jean-Claude Van Damme was the inspiration for Johnny Cage. Bruce Lee, who else would it be, for Liu Kang?
Of
And
course.
then you pick and choose all the other folks that were in there. Scorpion and Sub-Zero were just, why not put cool ninjas?
All the ninjas in the early games were kind of just generic, and they were all just colored
Yeah.
different colors. And then, of course, you had Chameleon, who shifted between all of the different ninjas and knew all their moves. Chameleon was probably the hardest character to play as, and I believe was a secret character in most of the games that you
Mhm.
had to unlock or use cheats to get.
My favorite thing is that they've always had these hidden things that you had
Yes,
to unlock or figure out. That's
yeah,
I always love that.
yeah, and it's cool the way the characters evolved because like I said, in the first few games up until probably Mortal Kombat 4, I believe, all the ninjas were generic looking ninjas. And they were just different colors. Sub-Zero was blue, Scorpion was yellow, Reptile was green, Rain was purple, and so on and so forth. And even the female ninjas were also just generically colored. And then they finally revamped the character designs when it crossed over to the 3D games. And we got a little bit more uniqueness. Sub-Zero also kind of changed previously in the 2D because they added a different Sub-Zero that didn't have a mask.
Yes, which they explain if you beat Sub-Zero's
Yeah.
ending in Mortal Kombat 2, but
Essentially, all the Sub-Zeros are just different Sub-Zeros that are all part of the same ninja clan, and that's why they have different, like, some wear the mask, but they all have the blue. The same. I think there's also been different Scorpions too, if I remember correctly. Like there's the main Scorpion who is pissed off because Sub-Zero killed him. Well, he blames Sub-Zero for his death.
yes,
It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it is a whole thing. And then there is the human Sub-Zero.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the human Scorpion.
Yep.
Who is him before everything happens. They get into timelines and time travel later on.
Yeah.
That also is a whole thing.
Most of the storyline also takes place in a different dimension, which I believe I gotta freaking remember.
It's kind of hell, but not really.
There's different realms, and
yes,
they're ruled over by different gods. So like Raiden is the god of Earth Realm, and Earth Realm is where all the human characters like Liu Kang and Kung Lao, Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, Jax, they all come from Earth Realm. And there's Nether Realm, which is, like you said, basically hell. And that's where Scorpion is, and Quan Chi, Shao Kahn, who's the emperor, and you have Baraka, who's all the Barakas are Baraka's race. I don't even know what they're called. They're all just called Baraka's race or whatever.
They're Tarkatans.
Okay, yeah, so they're all citizens of NetherRealm. It's travel between the dimensions, and basically the original plot was, like you said, all of these champions are brought before Shao Kahn for this tournament to determine the fate of the world, essentially. And
so if Earthrealm wins, then they can take over a realm. According to the Elder Gods, these are the rules for when a realm wants to invade and take over another realm.
Mm-hmm.
They then have to engage in mortal combat with their mightiest warriors, and whoever kills the other side or wins the tournament, then that realm chooses what happens.
Yep. And there's been a number of major antagonists throughout the whole series. Shao Kahn was like the first big bad. He's the emperor of NetherRealm, and he's trying to take over Earthrealm.
Yeah, which originally people thought that it was Shang Tsung, the evil sorcerer who steals the souls of folks. I bet Lo Pan was inspiration for him too.
Probably.
I could see that. And
then you have Quan Chi, who's another bad sorcerer guy.
Yes, there's lots of evil sorcerers, of course, because why wouldn't there be? And mysticism. And at first, it seems like it's Shang Tsung, and then in the second game, we get introduced to Shao Kahn, where it's, oh crap, Shang Tsung has a boss, and this guy is terrifying. Oh, also, shout out to the other fellow who was the Mortal Kombat creator, John Tobias. He almost did not end up doing this originally. His original career choice was that he wanted to be a comic artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did the Real Ghostbusters series before he did Midway Games, but he wanted to be a comic book artist, and the pay for freelancer comic book artists was just not enough to make ends meet, and he ended up just getting a job at Midway Games, and then working close with Ed Boon. They ended up just putting their heads together making this. So another ninja who is also who it turns out to be the brother of Sub-Zero is Noob Saibot, and Noob
Yeah.
Saibot, everyone knows Noob Saibot's name is Boone Tobias backwards.
Yeah.
So, there's just a fun little Easter egg, and he's actually one of my favorite ninjas because he's so cool.
Yeah, I like
And
Noob too.
does I think my three favorites are probably,
It
Scorpion, of course, Noob Saibot, and
it pissed me
Rain.
off that
I think
I
Rain
think
is
it was
my number one favorite for sure.
I Rain's cool. I always like my main guy was always Scorpion. I liked Smoke too. It kind of pissed me off that in I think Deadly Alliance they combined Noob Saibot and Smoke into one character, and it was called
Yeah,
Noob Smoke, and yet like basically switched between them. That was annoying because I liked both of those characters on their own. I don't know why they had to put them together as one.
I'm not sure. I mean, it was okay for the game, but at the same time, like it wasn't bad, but it was one of those things where you just kind of you did wish that they were just their own characters.
Yeah, I feel like they couldn't come up with enough fighting moves for each of them, so they had to combine them into one or something. I don't
It's
know.
possible.
It was interesting the way they did it, how you can use these like tag team maneuvers basically. Uh but then at the same time no one else in the game had that, so it was kind
Yeah.
of dumb.
Yeah, it was kind of a missed opportunity. I feel like that would have been a really interesting component if you could pick a team and switch in and out.
And I
And that
think they did do that in one of the Mortal Kombat games. I don't
I
remember
think
which
it's
one
in
exactly.
I think it's in one of the later ones.
Yeah, it was one of the 3D ones, I think.
It's not 11, but I don't know if it's 10 or 9. I haven't played those. Maybe yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the last one that I played was the reboot Mortal Kombat that came out a few years ago.
Oh, Mortal
Uh
Kombat 1?
no, Mortal Kombat. It was just called Mortal Kombat. It came out in 2011. That was the last
Oh,
Mortal
right,
Kombat that
right.
I've played. Uh
So
prior to that,
that might be 9 then or 8.
uh
'Cause there's
it
one it's weird because they don't do numbers and then they do
yeah,
num
they stopped.
they do numbers, then they don't do numbered
It's
sequels,
9 because
and
I think
then
Mortal Kombat X was the 10th one. That's why they called it Mortal Kombat X.
that's right. Yeah. It's 9x11, and then they go back to Mortal Kombat 1 with the most recent one, which is
Yeah.
very silly.
It's just I mean, they do a lot of stupid crap like that with reboots nowadays and confuse everybody by renaming things different numbers, and it's stupid. I don't like the way when companies do that, and it happens a lot. But so I grew up on though, and I think my favorite one was probably Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Because
Yes.
it basically combined the first three games into one and used all the characters, and it had probably the biggest roster until I think Mortal Kombat Armageddon had the biggest roster of all because it included every character that was ever in a Mortal Kombat game. But Mortal Kombat Trilogy had close to that too. It
Mhm.
had a huge roster of characters that you could play as, and all of the quote unquote boss characters were unlocked from the start. So you could play as Goro. I forget what the one freaking centaur guy was. You could play as him right
Oh,
off the start. You didn't have to unlock
M
him.
Motaro.
Motaro, correct? Yeah,
Yeah. But well, the thing with Motaro was that they couldn't do they weren't able to program the animation for his full-on centaur state, so
yeah,
they cut off half of the legs and they just made him bipedal, and they wrote in some bullshit curse that made him bipedal,
yeah,
but I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
yeah,
Like, it was one of those things where it was nice to just have him there. So whatever cut they needed to make, you kind of forgave him. You kind of forgave him. The problem with Armageddon though was, I don't know, I don't know why they thought that this would be an idea that would take off. They really blew it on the fatalities because they did the create a
create a
fatality
fatality.
thing,
Yeah, I see. I never
which
had Armageddon. I played it because I don't know if I went to a friend's house or what, but I did play it. I never owned it.
yeah,
Just
you ended up just doing the special move that was closest to the fatality that you wish was there.
right.
And then you just kind of called it.
Yeah,
It would have been nice if if they left in the creative fatality, but they just added regular fatalities, it would have been fine if they just reused the same ones. I don't think anybody would have cared.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sake, Scorpion's main fatality is just a variation of the same spear one.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they chose not to do that, but they at least put in great stage fatalities.
Yeah. That was, I think, all of the later 3D ones, Deadly Alliance, Deception. They also had amazing stage fatalities,
Yeah.
and also they had two different things. They had like stage transitions where you could throw someone like through a window or something, but it wouldn't kill them; it would just damage them, and then you would continue the fight on the next level down. And then
That
they
was one
had
of my favorite parts, and the
yeah,
music would change too. That was
yeah,
one of the coolest thing about it.
yeah, it was really dynamic the way they did that. And then of course you had, or you could throw them into like a pit of lava or a giant meat grinder and instantly win.
Yeah. I
I like Deadly Alliance and Deception too because they introduced the different fighting styles for each character where you press the button and they would change fighting styles. And then
I
they
thought
also
that
had
was a nice
weapons.
touch.
They
Yes,
also
I
had the
thought that that was a
weapons
nice
too.
touch.
Yeah, that was
The
really cool.
the
Especially because they allowed it so you could combo between fighting styles. You could start off and then like immediately switch, go into a different combo, and it really flowed really well.
Yeah, that was the right way to do it anyway. So
Yeah.
they when they have a clear vision, they can execute it really well.
Yes.
Um, when they when, but the other thing is when they have an idea that isn't fully fleshed out, it shows too.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say one of the better things about Mortal Kombat as a franchise is they don't give you the same thing over and over and regurgitate it.
Yeah.
It's not like an ESPN game where you're just getting a new
Madden.
roster, or Madden, which is
Yeah.
very guilty of this, or Call of Duty, which is
Yeah.
exactly the same game, just with a different story mode that most people aren't going to care about,
Yeah.
and maybe some different level change, but it's the same game.
Yeah. No, Mortal
Mortal
Kombat
Kombat,
definitely
they're constantly
changed up.
trying, yeah, they're constantly changing it up. They're constantly throwing in new ideas.
Yeah.
And even just to see what happens, like the crypt is a great thing that I'm glad has continued to stay a present thing. The crypt is just a cool way that you can unlock
Yeah.
it, and Mortal Kombat 11 has the best crypt yet, probably. I haven't played Mortal Kombat 1, so I don't know, but from the things that I have read, it seems like I probably was better off staying away from it, for like,
Yeah.
and not paying full price for it. Maybe now I think I can be okay since it's in the $20-$30 range. But I digress. The like they give you things that you didn't ask for sometimes that are just so awesome that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even advertised, and you're just thinking, why wasn't this advertised? This is cool. Like the Mortal Kombat Tetris thing in, I think,
Yeah.
Deception, or
It was Deception. Yeah.
the Mortal Kombat Mario Kart thing, the
Puzzle
Mortal,
Combat. It was what it
yes,
was.
Puzzle Combat, Mortal Kombat Chess. I thought
Yeah.
that the
The chess
chess,
combat was really fun. I loved that mode.
yeah, I loved it too. That, and the combat cart my was
Yeah.
those
The
were cool
Deception
things
probably
that they could have been their own things. I think Deception is one of the best ones
it's
because
probably my favorite one.
they tried to do so many things. And even the conquest mode was the
The
conquest
conquest mode
mode
was
wasn't
great.
a the conquest mode was interesting, but it was also really fun. And I liked how it set the stage for Shaolin Knights,
Shaolin
for
monks.
Shaolin monks. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was
I
thinking of
want I know
Shanghai Knights.
we weren't going to talk about the spin-offs too much, but I do want to mention Shaolin Monks cuz it was a fucking awesome game. I loved
Yes,
that game so much and the co-op was really fun. The combat was so satisfying in that game. That was a great one. I wish they would do another Mortal Kombat game like that where it's more of a beat 'em up / action adventure game cuz
they
it
were
was so much fun.
they were originally planning to do something for Scorpion and Sub Zero called Mortal Kombat Fire and Ice, but
Oh, that would have
it
been
just
fucking awesome.
it ended up getting scrapped for some reason. I think Midway. I think it was at the point where Midway was just suffering financially, and that may have been it. May have been one of the things that they couldn't do because they were about to file for bankruptcy, or they had filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah. And it probably wouldn't happen now because they don't do games like that anymore, like these big AAA companies. If Mortal Kombat's
No,
gonna stick to friggin' fighting games from now on, they're not gonna actually go outside the box anymore because that's unfortunately just what AAA games do now.
it's too bad. I
It
mean,
is really too bad.
unless they made it a separate, item included in a regular Mortal Kombat game,
Yeah,
I don't see it happening. I don't see it being its own game, but I could see
but you know,
I
it's
could I
they
could
don't
see it I could see a DLC of
they don't
this.
take
That I
chances
could
anymore.
see.
They don't take chances anymore like they used to because you had, you know, back in the 90s, you had Mortal Kombat did try to branch out, or Midway tried to branch out with Mortal Kombat when they had the Mortal Kombat Chronology Sub-Zero game, which was a lot of people cite that as one of the worst games of all time because it's
It's
just not
pretty
that good.
damn it's pretty
It's
damn
bad.
bad, but it looked good, and
Yes,
they and
but they could have said, okay, well, fuck it, we're just gonna stick to fighting games, but they didn't, and they kept innovating, and they did Shaolin Monks a few years later, and it was fucking amazing. It was so good.
no. Every once in a while, I'll just I'll look at one of my friends and I'll just go, "We are Goro," or like I remember my friend Alex and we used to just look at each other and we would just do the cornholio thing and it would just go, "I am Shujinko! I am Shujinko!" and
Shujinko.
and nobody would know what the hell we were talking about, and we just looked like idiots, but it was great.
Yeah. You
Those
know,
were
it's funny because
those
I've
are
been
some fun
actually,
times.
for some reason, like gameplay of Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero has been coming up in my Facebook reels a lot lately, and I don't know why. Because didn't really. This was even before we had decided to do the Mortal Kombat episode, and you know, I was looking up Mortal Kombat stuff. So it just all of a sudden randomly I started getting these Sub-Zero, and I'm like, wow, that game. I can't. I think my uncle had it, but I never played it as a kid. Like I saw it, I'm like, I never like was just into it. So whenever, because primarily when I played Mortal Kombat was at my grandmother's house because my uncle had like all the Mortal Kombat games. So, but I would just like I would rather play the fighting game, so I would just play Mortal Kombat Trilogy all the time. I never really played Sub-Zero, and I thought the cover was stupid because it had freaking uh Quan Chi's face or something on it. And it was like, what the fuck? Why is it
Weren't
Mortal
we
Kombat Sub-Zero and they don't even have a picture of Sub-Zero on it? I was like, what the fuck is this?
weren't we introduced to Quan Chi through this game?
I might have been. Yeah, it might have been.
I feel like his name may have been mentioned.
I don't remember him in previous Mortal Kombats
He
before that.
wasn't
So
he wasn't in any of the first 3, and
yeah, so
4, I
then
think, came out in '99.
four
This
came
was
out after Sub-Zero,
Yeah,
I think.
this was I think Sub-Zero was '97 or '98.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this was really our introduction to Quan Chi, really. You're looking at the pull up the cover now. Um, you're looking at yeah, Mortal Kombat mythologies. You're looking at
mythologies. Yeah,
which if it was a working game, then would have been more. But
I
we
think it
ended
was
up
the
getting
disc.
that.
The disc itself had Quan Chi's face on it.
Oh, I see. So you're
Yeah, so like the cover just
well,
had the Mortal Kombat symbol that said Sub-Zero,
yeah,
but the
that I could
actual
see.
disc had fucking Quan Chi's
Oh
face on
my
it. But it
god,
was like
that's
the
funny.
live action actor because I think they used FMVs as the cutscenes for the game. So it was this picture of this
Oh yeah,
random
I
ass
could see
dude
it.
in fucking in corpse paint, basically.
Yeah, like
And it was just so random.
I would have been very
But
confused because I'm looking at this and even though I know who this is, I'm I'm looking at it, I'm just saying this is called Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. Where is Sub-Zero?
exactly.
Is this Sub-Zero? Did they change his face? My first thought would be like, what the fuck happened to Sub-Zero?
That's what I thought too. I was like, why is this fucking weird dude look like Sub-Zero? That's not Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
and
this was our first real gateway to Quan Chi. And honestly, if you just watch the movie of Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero, it's pretty fun.
yeah,
All of the cutscenes, it's pretty cool. They give you about a
it was
good
just the
half
gameplay
hour
that
worth.
was awful.
Yeah, everything about it was great except the fucking game.
And it's funny
Just
because
like just like the Seattle Kraken, everything is good about it, but the team.
I was looking at this like gameplay footage that kept coming up in my Facebook reels, and I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I didn't play this as a kid because I would probably be pissed off at this fucking game. It's so annoying the way you have to move around because it's got like fighting game controls and feel, even though it's supposed to be like a side scrolling platforming game. And I'm looking at the
Right.
platforming and I'm like, wow, this would suck. I'm glad I've never played this.
Yeah,
It just looks horrible.
they borrowed the idea of Batman Forever
Oh God,
of
yeah, yes,
and and it's almost like they copied everything. It's almost like they copied everything and they pasted and they just changed up the look
yeah,
and didn't bother to play the game and
hmm
people forgot to tell them that the gameplay is horrible on Batman Forever. So
yeah,
they basically made the same mistakes where even in a behind the scenes featurette, one of the guys who worked on the game who's talking about the game and he's telling you how to navigate it. He's telling you that you need to do certain things to try to trigger it, or you need to be a little bit faster, or you need to be whatever. He's basically telling you this game is fucked,
yeah.
but without saying it. But I remember Crazy Sean, who was with us on the Yu-Gi-Oh episode about the trading card game.
Hmm.
He had rented it from Blockbuster, and I went over his house, I think one night after Scouts or something, and we sat down to play it because he rented Banjo Kazooie and he rented Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, and we just sat down to play it. We thought, oh, this is going to be really cool. It's different.
Hmm.
Wow, I bet you this is fun. And we couldn't get past anything, and we were both. It just got to the point where the three of us were just laughing so hard that we were like trying to die on purpose. Because
Yeah,
even because Sub-Zero's many death FMVs are hysterical.
yeah,
Most of the acting is not very good, and there's a campiness to it that if you just watch the movie, it's actually pretty funny.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that was
maybe
another thing is the death
skip the game.
animations.
So skip
Just
the gameplay and just watch Mortal Kombat Mythologies, all the cutscenes. Just do that
which
instead.
I'm sure is on YouTube because they have
They
everything
are
like that.
oh they are. I watched them. I watched them
Yeah,
this week.
but I guess my original point is that they went with that and it was pretty bad. It was pretty panned across the board, but they still pushed the innovation. Now, if that happened today and they released a shitty game like that today, they would never do it again. They would never try anything else again because they'd be like, "Oh, we can't lose money." You know, it's all
They
about
might even they might
pleasing
even
the
be
shareholders.
they might even be done as a studio.
Yeah, it could be.
Like I something like this that ends up being super unprofitable or just a bad game, that's something that would make the studio that's something that would make the AAA team just panic and shutter the studio or sell it off or something.
Yeah,
But they tried again with mythologies a couple years later with Mortal Kombat Special Forces, and
yeah.
that game is terrible too.
I never even played that one. Actually, I had never even heard of that game
I never
before
played I
doing the
never played
research for
that
this
one.
episode.
That one I never played, but just watching the opening sequence is just hysterical.
Yeah,
It's one of the silliest opening sequences I've ever seen.
yeah.
And it seems like with that game, whoever was involved in it just said, I don't care, just do whatever you want. I think Ed Boon had left at that point.
Yeah.
I think he left midway for a little bit. And I think during that time, that was one of the things where he just said, no, this is awful. I don't want to be involved in this.
Hmm.
So whenever anybody has asked him about that, he's just said, I don't know. He's pretty much just said anything bad, that anything terrible like that, I have nothing to do with it. I could tell
Yeah.
you I could write a book on this stuff, but this project is terrible.
Yeah, I could
Everything
imagine
about it was
that.
bad,
Yeah.
and I could see that.
You got to wonder if like the publisher was saying, "Oh, you got to put out something. We need another Mortal Kombat game," but they were developing the actual main series game still, so they had some like secondary team just work on, "Oh, just do a spin-off for us so we have something to publish in between Mortal Kombat games."
Probably. Anyway, to get back to the main games, they I 4 was the first 3D was the first 3D one that we had, and
Yeah.
they also had sidestepping, which was interesting,
Yeah.
where it was no longer just a 2D fighter. You could actually go around and you could you could dodge their stuff by just constantly sidestepping. And I
Yep.
remember sometimes people would get really pissed off about it because you could just sidestep them the whole time and they would never be able to touch you. And
Yeah.
you could draw out a game to go forever if there was if there was a zero time limit. I just remember people getting pissed off, but you keep doing it because you watch them get angrier and angrier, and then you just end up winning by just these little like love taps
Yeah.
throughout everything. It was really funny. And then, but I think Deadly Alliance was the well, 4 also gives us some of the cooler stage fatalities, like the
Yeah.
woods, where you can throw people into the evil trees and
Yeah.
they could just eat them, which is right out of Evil Dead, by the way.
Hmm.
And then it's basically if the trees from the Wizard of Oz just said fuck it and decided to take back the land, this is what that level would be, the Cursed Forest. And then you also get Quan Chi's fatality, which is one of the best fatalities of all time, of just him ripping somebody's leg off and beating the shit out of them
Hmm.
with it. That's that's one of my favorites. And I think what makes it funnier is that he doesn't stop he never stops beating them with their own leg even after they're dead. You
Uh-huh.
have to it just fades out and you just keep hearing the guys like, "Oh, just
We forgot to mention something, uh, which has been a staple of Mortal Kombat for several of the games, but started in Mortal Kombat 2. And that, of course, is the cameo by Dan Forden, the
yes."
sound programmer, where if you got a particularly spicy combo or knocked somebody over or uppercutted them in some way and knocked them down, his face would appear on the screen and he would be like toasty, which is
Yes.
classic. And it that was in most of the 3D the 2D games. I think they added it to some of the 3D games as well.
They did. They added it to one of Scorpion's fatalities where he rips off his mask and breathes and lights them on fire.
Yeah.
Um, I forget if it's Deadly Alliance or Deception where they added it, but in that one he goes Toasty 3D, and it's so fun. But Dan Forden's thing, he used to just do this when he was beating people in video games, or he would watch somebody getting beat really bad. He would just say, "Oh, you're toast, you're toast, you're toast,"
Yeah.
and then toast became toasty, and then they told him to just do it, just to throw it in the game. They did all kinds of stuff like that. They always
Yeah.
try to throw in as many Easter eggs,
There
as
was a lot
many
of
hidden
in
gimmicks as
jokes
you
and
can.
in jokes and Easter eggs in the original Mortal Kombat. And it was probably because it really was just a group of like guys that were all just, the original developers were just a bunch of like group of guys that were just screwing around, you know? And
Pretty much those guys and the Tony Hawk Pro Skater teams were were basically 10 people or
I,
less.
I think that's a big part of why video games are not, or at least AAA games are not as good anymore, is because Now it's these giant teams of people, hundreds of people working on these games. Not to saying that they're not talented, but it was something else when you had a group of like 5 or 6 guys in a room some office building somewhere, just sitting around brainstorming and putting their ideas together, and the creativity of it. It's video games had this like indie flair to them back then, even the big AAA games, and they don't have that anymore. The AAA games feel like Hollywood blockbuster movies where
I
there's
mean,
no
they have the budget to back that up too.
yes. So
But yeah,
there's
it's super controlled.
yeah,
It's not the same. Probably micromanaged up the wazoo.
yeah,
I can't imagine how many executives who have no knowledge of anything just put their 2 cents in and just dilute the crap out of out of games today.
yeah.
Even in the early 2000s, if a big developer was behind a game, like let's just say Ratchet and Clank, for example,
Mm-hmm.
all they were doing was just allocating the money to this project and just saying, "Here, you guys could go. We have a leftover budget. It's kind of use it or lose it. You could go do a passion project or something. I don't
Yeah.
care." Where now, I guess you could continue where you were going. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good. Uh, yeah, I agree. It's just not the same like that anymore. The passion is gone from video games. And the early Mortal Kombat was one of those games where you could tell that they really had a passion for their game. They enjoyed it. It was an art form, and that's not, you don't see that as much anymore, which is pretty sad. You kind of see it from like the indie scene. The indie video game scene is still pretty, you get that feeling that it's people that actually give a shit, that are actually applying a art, um but AAA games, that's long gone.
Yeah, it just really sucks. I wish that they
Yeah,
would get back to that mentality, but it's so far gone at this point that you're just not going to see it. And everybody's so greedy and money hungry with the microtransactions. We talked about that many episodes ago,
yes we
probably
did.
the third or fifth episode. I don't know. It was
Honest
10 or less, I would say.
Honestly, I've been saying this for a couple of years now, and this is not against anybody in particular. I would never want anybody to lose their jobs, but the video game industry really needs to have like a big crash. The AAA companies need to go out of business and go away. I know that's probably never going to happen because these are like companies that are too big to fail, quote unquote. But they're they've created such a horrible situation in.
Hello? Did you get cut? Oh no, they were
I mean,
listening in. I can hear you now. They were
uh,
listening in. They tried to stop you. Keep going. Fight the good fight. Say what you were gonna say.
but is it?
Oh no. Now you're getting all staticky and wobbly.
Oh no,
They're screwing with us. They're sabotaging this episode.
they're listening in.
They are listening in. The
Sons of
triple A's, the triple A sons of bitches are getting involved. They're trying. They're trying to destroy our mainframe. Quick, start
Yeah,
talking about things that we start praising them. See if they go away.
fuck that.
Oh, it's good.
It's
It's
good.
so good that they did that. It's
Yeah,
good that they destroyed.
it's so good.
It's so good that they destroyed the entire industry and foundation.
Yeah.
What else? What would I spend my money on if I didn't have microtransactions? Groceries?
Oh
God.
God.
Well, who needs those?
Fuck that. Food is for
Yeah.
losers.
Hey, you're getting better. Okay, go back to where you were.
But yeah, we definitely need a reset in the video game industry to go back to that. And I don't think it'll ever happen because video games are just too popular now. They became mainstream. Video games going mainstream is the worst thing that happened to video games,
Yeah.
and that's just a fact. And because it became a business, instead of an art form. And look at any form of art, music, uh, movies, TV shows. When they become big, they get kind of shitty because it becomes all about making sure that the shareholders are happy.
Yes, just look at Star Wars and Marvel.
Yes, perfect example.
Just outside of Daredevil Born Again, I do not give a shit about Marvel.
I have not watched one Marvel movie since Endgame, except for Deadpool and Wolverine, because that was awesome. But other than Deadpool and Wolverine, I have not watched one of the Marvel movies since Endgame.
I've watched a couple, but I'm really picking and choosing now, and there's some of them where I'm really just
They're so
I don't see the
oversaturated.
point.
Like, I'm sick of it now. It's getting to be too much. They made too many movies too fast, and it was a cash cow for them. That's why.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even making too many movies too fast. It was just not letting it breathe when they
Yeah,
went to Endgame.
yeah.
They just went right into phase whatever phase they're up to, phase 69. Why not?
Phase.
They went to plaid for
Yeah,
whatever reason. They just went to ludicrous speed, and then they gone to plaid, and now the plaid era sucks.
yeah,
And I think anything outside of Daredevil Born Again, only because they're just picking up where the Netflix series left off. There isn't really anything worth watching, and even if there is, there's really no point because why?
yeah,
You already did the big payoff. There is no bigger payoff than what you already did. And whatever you were trying to do with Kang the Conqueror is now screwed to the point where you have to bring Robert Downey Jr. back to be Doctor Doom in another multiverse thing, and nobody wants this. So
yeah,
what are you doing?
yeah.
Just stop it. And the same with Star Wars, just because I mean I've heard that Andor is amazing, and I'm sure it is, but I'm just I'm just not interested.
Yeah,
I'd rather just
I agree.
I'd rather just pick up where I left off on the Clone Wars and just watch that.
Yeah,
But I don't think that there's I don't even want to watch a I don't want to watch a new Star Wars movie.
no,
I'm not even interested in watching the old ones so much
no.
anymore, which that sucks.
I'll go back and read the expanded universe books novels, also known as the
Yes.
Legends canon now.
Yes,
Uh,
those I will listen to the audiobooks because the
yeah,
narrators are awesome and the production is top notch on these.
yeah, yeah. But
They're
I don't.
very enjoyable audiobooks.
I have really no interest in the newer Star Wars stuff, and it's sad because Star Wars was my favorite movie series back in the day, and it's kind of like tainted for me now because of what Disney's done to it.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
So
And they have kind of done that with Mortal Kombat 1. I've wanted to figure out how I
yeah,
would get back to it. This is how we can, I guess. Kind of sad. And
I've heard the same thing.
we did skip over um Mortal Kombat versus DC, which I I'm bringing it to that now too. That was an interest going back to the trying to change something up. Mortal Kombat DC, this was one of those studio changes things because they were going to do another regular Mortal Kombat game, and they had all these things planned out. I think after Armageddon
Hmm.
or what became, and they, I guess it would have been Mortal Kombat 7 at that point.
Yeah.
They and Yeah, it was either Mortal Kombat 7 or Mortal Kombat 8. I don't remember, but they didn't they didn't do it. They scrapped it because Midway was in a really bad spot financially. They told them we have to figure out some way to make money. Don't do a regular Mortal Kombat. Try to so they partnered with DC and they thought outside the box and said, okay, well, What if we just had them fight DC, similar to their, I guess their answer to Marvel versus Capcom, right?
Hmm.
Was just let's go Mortal Kombat and DC. It worked for Capcom. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll work for us. I don't know if Marvel versus Capcom was a Hail Mary, but or Marvel versus Street Fighter. I don't know if that was a Hail Mary play by Capcom that worked,
Mm.
or and that's how we ended up getting that franchise. Maybe perhaps some other day we could get into that. I would like to because I think that's the best fighting game period of all time. Marvel versus Capcom 2, but that's just me.
So apparently
Um,
there was actually an X-Men versus Street Fighter before that, which I didn't even know about that.
huh.
So there you go.
I do have the collection and I should explore it. I just bought it because like just for Marvel versus Capcom 2. So
Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the
yeah.
fucking one of the best games ever made. I love that game so
Yes.
much.
Yes. And but, we're just gonna have to do an episode on that. Now
We'll
I'm
definitely have to do it. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a good game.
But anyway, Mortal Kombat versus DC was kind of their answer to that. And the only thing that, and this is one of the things that some people didn't really like, besides it not being that bloody because it was rated T for teen, it also it's lacking the blood, but it's also lacking regular fatalities, and there
Yeah.
are it does have fatalities, but they're kind of neutered a little bit. They're not
I,
as
I,
violent as they normally are.
and I
But
think that was DC's stipulation. I think they didn't want to
yes,
see their heroes getting ripped apart.
yes, they also didn't want that was the main reason, and they also didn't want their heroes, murdering and crossing the line,
Yeah.
which that makes sense. I understand that. So you get the heroic brutality instead, where
Yeah.
where they incapacitate the other guys, but they're still moving and they're still very much alive. They're just not cold. They're just out cold.
Yeah.
And we do still get fatalities, but they're not as brutal as they could have been. But I think it makes sense for that game.
Yeah.
So I'm not while while they were while they were shortcomings, they also it was one of those things where in the context of this game, you kind of let it slide because you also didn't think you would ever get something like this, and it was kind of neat, and I feel like people kind of expected something like this a little bit, where some people I feel like some comic book fans would have been annoyed that Batman crosses the line, right?
Yeah.
So I think within this context that it worked for it. But out of that, we also got the storytelling element of a regular story mode with cut with regular in-game cutscenes leading into the fights and everything, which they had never done before. And now that's something that's stayed permanent to the story mode, and I really like it. I love the way that they do that. So hats off to them on keeping that. That if there's anything you could take away that was also innovative and cool from that they should
Hmm.
have kept, that was it. So I also appreciate that most of the time when they're adding things, they kind of have their finger on the pulse as to what worked. One thing that for whatever reason, they never brought back was Create a Fighter. I wish that they brought that back. Maybe they will at some point. But you can do a whole lot of customization to the regular fighters in the more recent games, so that's cool too. But to get back to the shitification, I guess, for lack of a better word, of Mortal Kombat from Mortal Kombat 1, they threw every possible thing at the wall, and it seems like a lot of the issues with this game was that it was just a huge tease and also too many microtransactions where it just pissed off the general fan base.
Yeah. I also think they kind of went overboard with the newer Mortal Kombat games with the characters that they added because they add just random people in now. Like Rambo is a character, and Ghostface from Scream.
I don't mind that, but they
I
are,
don't
but
know.
there is a group of Mortal Kombat fans that feel a way about it, which
I,
I do understand because, yeah, there could have been other fighters from the Mortal Kombat franchise that aren't in the
exactly.
games that maybe deserve to come back or
Well, and
haven't been there as in a while.
I think the problem is too is that they're, they put all these, let's say, celebrity cameos, we'll call them, in the game that you have to pay for to get these characters. They're not in the game by default. You have to buy them. And so, it goes back to the whole microtransaction thing. And, okay, maybe, yeah, someone wants to buy it because they want to play as Omni-Man because it's their favorite fucking comic book character or something, or, but it's just like you said, they could put in actual Mortal Kombat characters that haven't been in the game, or create new characters, or do crossover with another fighting game or something along those lines, instead of just, oh, let's put in popular TV show character Omni-Man and what's his face from frickin' the boys, Homelander, you know. And
I
I
did
get it. It's kind
one
of
of the
cool because then you could do like these, these matchup fights, like, oh, what would happen if Omni-Man fought Homelander and stuff like that. But I don't know.
One of the ones that I thought was really cool was Spawn. I appreciated that they got Spawn
Yeah,
in there, and they also they also, at least they took the time to hire they at least hired the actors most associated with playing these characters
yeah.
to be the voice. So they got Keith David to be Spawn, and honestly, Spawn was pretty cool, but they made him too slow. He could never be a main for me.
And
But
I will say it's not the first time that a
they did
fighting
a
game.
good. But they added Rain and
Yeah,
as a DLC character, and Rain was awesome. Rain was my main for sure.
and it's not the
But
first time a fighting game franchise has had cameos from other game. I think Soul Calibur 2 was probably one of the more famous ones, where
yep,
the GameCube version had Link, the Xbox version had Spawn,
yes,
and the PlayStation version had Heihachi or whatever from Tekken. So, okay, but they kind of also like wrote them into the storyline a little bit, to add them into the game. It wasn't just like, oh, look at these characters that we stole from other franchises and they're just going to be there for fun. Like they actually kind of wrote it into the plot of why they were there.
they did.
Which, for this doesn't really, I mean, I guess again, they could argue, well, it's Mortal Kombat, they're just pulling the mightiest heroes from the different realms to fight, but it feels like kind of a cop out a little bit.
Uh, Sometimes I like it, and sometimes I'm a little perplexed as to why they chose a character.
Well, also the power scaling doesn't make sense because we all know friggin' Omni-Man would run through everybody on that roster with no problem at all. So how is it that it kind of feels okay? So they have to dumb down Omni-Man for him to be on the actual thing and be able to fight these people without him nuking everybody instantly.
Yeah, I mean, even in Mortal Kombat 9, I think they added Freddy Krueger, and in I forgot which Mortal Kombat game that they added Kratos, but I like you said, they would have to dumb down Kratos for him to
Yeah,
even be
Kratos kind of, because he is literally a god.
yeah, and also
But at least
for
like
also for Freddy Krueger because he's
he's a
not alive.
supernatural yeah, he's a supernatural force, but there's other characters that are a supernatural force in Mortal
Right.
Kombat.
That's
Like
true.
Scorpion is the perfect
Yes.
example because he's undead. So, Freddy Krueger makes a little bit more sense being able to actually power scale with the regular people in Mortal Kombat. But I mean, Omni-Man or even Homelander, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
mean, I guess they had
Spawn also
Superman and
I think Spawn also was okay as a power scale because Spawn uses the forces of the necroplasm, and the necroplasm is a finite resource, so he has to
yeah,
use guns.
yes,
So that makes sense. Well, Superman, one of his big weaknesses is magic.
that's
So
true. That's true.
so that's kind of how they made it. That's how they wrote it in, where he could be affected by a lot of the combatants.
Yeah.
So if it's written in well, it makes sense, but if
Yeah.
it just doesn't, but there's other points where it just doesn't really. I don't understand why they're there or what
Hmm.
they would or what they could do there. Like, what is the reason for them being there? Like, why would Rambo be here? Why would the Terminator be here? Why would
Yeah.
RoboCop be here? There's some things where you're just thinking this doesn't really make any sense. Or Omni-Man, like you said, how do Omni-Man and Homelander not just rip everybody apart except each other?
Yeah.
There are some things where you kind of scratch your head, but I feel like it's one of those things where you you really shouldn't be thinking that hard
Yeah. I mean, I guess you have
about
to,
it.
you suspend your disbelief, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of the few things where you kind of appreciate it. I know this is kind of weird of me to say because I hate the universes beyond thing with Magic the Gathering
Yeah.
because it does not make any sense for the IP.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Well, occasionally for Mortal Kombat, I'll scratch my head a little bit, but it's not like they're taking the whole game and doing it. They're just plugging in one character here and there. They're not just saying, "Oh, this is the new Mortal Kombat game with no Mortal Kombat characters," or "There's only 3 Mortal Kombat characters and everything else is a different IP."
Hmm.
Right? Like I'm not gonna see Scorpion versus Bluey and his and their family,
That would be
which
fucked up.
that would be pretty fucking
Although
funny.
there, so there is a, there is a, I don't know. I guess it still exists. There's an online game called Mugen, which
Yes,
is an online.
Mugen is awesome.
Yeah, it's an online fighting game platform that allows you to download any character you want. Any character that anybody has ever thought of could be in the game because people like just mod them into the game. So you could realistically have Scorpion versus Bluey.
Yeah,
I
that is
wonder if
really
Mugen
funny.
still. I haven't played Mugen in so long, and I'm wondering if it still exists. I guess it's got to, right?
I guess. I don't know who would go after it.
The Mugen archive.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would go after it. I don't think that it's I think it's too silly for anybody to just
Yeah, because
get
it's freeware. No one's profiting off of it. So
yeah, so I guess they would just leave it alone.
yeah,
I mean, if I was a creator of anybody of any franchise that got put into a Mugen, I would probably call it I would probably be a badge of honor for me.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
these
a
days
sign
it
that
would be a
it's a sign you've made it.
yes, exactly. You haven't made it until you haven't made it in the cartoon world until you get put in a Mugen game. And just like how you haven't made it as a pro wrestler until someone makes an action figure of you, or in life, in real life, you really haven't made it until someone makes an action figure of you
Hmm.
and you can go into a store and buy you. I would that
You think
that's my dream is to go into a store and buy an action figure of myself.
someone posted because they made an action figure of the Minecraft movie Steve. So it's just fucking Jack Black wearing a blue sweater. It's and someone was like, "This is literally just a fucking action figure of a 40-year-old man." Like,
Yeah, it's just funny.
yeah.
But as we were getting to it, well, the lore of Mortal Kombat in general is very extensive. And
Hmm.
this is one of the other where they have gotten so ridiculous where they've they've inadvertently painted themselves into corners several times, and every way that they've managed to get out of it has ended up painting themselves into deeper into a different corner
Hmm.
where now I'm not even sure how they can do it to the point where they had to reset the timeline for Mortal Kombat 1, which I don't know what they're going to do with Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah.
But with the first game, they basically, like we said, they turned it into so many ridiculous microtransactions where you have to pay for everything. And on top of that, in the story modes, they've brought into it's almost like it's almost So how Mortal Kombat has ended up being jumping the shark multiple times and resetting their things. It's kind of like it's kind of like when somebody across the street is demoing a house and then they're going to build up a new house. So to
Hmm.
get rid, so there's a bunch of debris and all this other stuff that they have to clear out. And when you demo the house, let's just say the house was not lived in for a number of years and it was just condemned basically. So you demolish the condemned house and all of the rats and insects that were living there have and other vermin have nowhere to go. So they start finding other places in the neighborhood to live. So what does the contractor do? The contractor, I probably not legal, but this is what happened in my old neighborhood. They would go and get possums to go take care of the vermin in the area or around
Hmm.
the house. So the neighborhood would have a possum problem
Oh my god.
for a period of time. Yeah, again, I don't know if this was legal, probably not, but this is what they did. Then you'd have a possum problem. Then to get rid of the possums, right? Because now you have this issue, they would bring in raccoons. Again,
Thank
probably
God.
illegal. Yeah. So then you would start seeing raccoons in the neighborhood, and you would say, why the hell are there raccoons in the neighborhood? But you would also say, I haven't seen opossums in a while.
Yeah.
And then that would be a problem. I don't know what they would do to get rid of the raccoons. I never saw a bobcat in the neighborhood, so there's at least that. I think at some point the raccoons would just kind of fuck off. I really
That's
don't
what gonna
know.
they're gonna introduce bobcats next to take care of the raccoons.
I don't know, but I don't live in that neighborhood anymore, so I don't care what they do. I hope they do it because there's a lot of people left in that neighborhood that I don't like. So if they got mauled by a bobcat tomorrow, good. But that's basically what's happened with Mortal Kombat. So Armageddon was when they just decided, okay, we're done with this stuff. Oh, one of the other cool things about Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance is that they opened the game with the credits of just killing Liu Kang, where they just take Liu Kang away from you for the whole game, and you're just like, oh shit, that's right. That was one of the first big oh shit moments, and then in I think Deception you could play as zombie Liu Kang. And then anyway, so they do Armageddon, and then Armageddon turns into the DC universe. And when they finally get to Mortal Kombat 9, basically Raiden is about to die at the end of Mortal Kombat Armageddon, in a
Hmm.
sense. And before he dies, he channels his amulet and he sends a message to himself back in time to the first Mortal Kombat tournament, to the original one. And he tells himself what needs to happen so that that doesn't happen and Shao Kahn doesn't finally take over. So they set all the stuff in motion to do that. And then they go into time travel in Mortal Kombat, like throughout 9, 10, and 11 they start time traveling and talking to their past selves and everything like that. And some younger versions of characters end up dying in the process. So the older versions of the characters cease to exist in the timelines. And then it gets really funky. And then Kronika, we get introduced to her in Mortal Kombat 11, where she's just like, I've been controlling the sands of time since the beginning, and I'm honestly sick of Raiden shit. So I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do and wipe out all of you so that Earthrealm just doesn't win because I'm just tired of this bullshit and I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
So then they had to stop Chronica, and then it gets crazier in the DLC where Shang Tsung, who they ended up, this was one of the coolest things that they ever did, was for the DLC. they brought back the movie versions of the characters and they got the original actors from the Mortal Kombat movie
Oh, that's
to
kind of cool.
play them, and they got their skins and they scanned them and everything. And
That's pretty cool.
yeah, and of course the dude who is Shao Kahn, who the dude who is of course Shang Tsung steals the fucking show.
Yeah.
And awesome to hear him and get right back into that character and just to see the character on the screen to choose that skin, it was one of the sickest things ever. So that
Yeah.
was one of the best things they ever did. But he of course is Shang Tsung, so he does some shenanigans to try to claim the crown, and Liu Kang becomes a god basically. They should like just beat Kronika, so they make him the fire god, and they go through all this stuff, and it becomes this really awesome thing. But then they painted themselves into another corner because now they're controlling the sands of time. So now they have to do other. So now it's gotten crazy again. So in Mortal Kombat 1, they they end up, so at the end of the DLC, because they get the sands of time, Liu Kang chooses to return to reset the entire Mortal Kombat universe so that not even the first tournament happened. It's like they
Oh.
just go back to 1, and this is why Mortal Kombat 1 is Mortal Kombat 1, because this sets up the
Oh.
original first tournament again.
Okay.
But the problem is they end up doing too much, and they start getting into multiverses, and you start seeing all these different versions of characters in the cutscene that you can't play as.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get all of these different versions where Johnny Cage has Ermac abilities or some other weird variation, or these other characters that you will never get to meet. They're just there in the background. So they give you everything and you can't, but they also give you nothing at the same time, because now you're not even wondering what happened. You're just like, oh, I guess this is a thing. Or if you were thinking, hey, it'd be really cool if Scorpion what if Scorpion and Sub-Zero's backstories were flipped, and like what would an ice version of Scorpion Spear look like? Well, it's there, then and it's kind of sometimes one of those things where it's really cool in your head, and and as much as you want to see it, you don't really want, like, once it happens, you're just underwhelmed by it because now it exists, and now you're kind of you just wish that it was still a fantasy in your mind just for you,
Yeah.
or just something where you and your friends can talk about, but now it's a real thing. But you can't even play with that real thing. You watched it happen, but you can't even do it for yourself, so it's not even worth seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a bunch of that stuff, and now they jumped the shark again. Again, they're introducing the bobcats now to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And now it's too much stuff, and then with all the microtransactions and everything and all that stuff, at least we got Floyd out of it, who was a Pink Floyd reference as a secret hidden ninja. At least they went back to do that.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
it's,
I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, they added him with with one of the more recent patches and stuff as just a hidden ninja. It's pretty cool. And it's a thing. And I don't really know where they're gonna go back from this, but they canceled DLC supposedly because it wasn't selling well enough, the previous combat pack, or so they just said, "Oh, well, fuck you," basically to the fans of
Yeah.
just, "Well, you didn't pay us enough money, so now we're just not gonna give you more things that we said we were gonna do," which is really messed up.
Yeah.
So it's
Unfortunately, that's AAA companies.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe NetherRealm Studios, which is what ended up happening with Mortal Kombat. Eventually, Warner Brothers bought Midway out, and
Yeah.
or at least the assets of Midway, and turned it into its own studio. So if anything happened, if anything else was good with Mortal Kombat versus DC, it also introduced them to a buyer potentially. I guess this may have been the idea all along at the time of Midway because they were hurting so bad financially that they were just thinking we need to find a way to sell this to
Yeah.
somebody or we're closing.
Yeah.
So maybe that was where they thought, oh, well, let's cozy up to Warner and see if Warner Brothers is interested. Or maybe they heard that Warner Brothers was interested in creating a game studio, and they just said, hey, you know, we could do this game with you, and then we're automatically connected. So just think about this. If it does well, think of it as an early sign of what your numbers could be like. Maybe that was a sales pitch to them, and that's why Warner was okay with it. I could see that if this
Yeah.
was just basically a glorified business play, which I guess it worked. But we'll just have to see where it goes from here. Maybe with Mortal Kombat 2, they'll end up righting the ship in a way. But I'm not really sure. I would still like to play Mortal Kombat 1. And like I said, now that it's a lot cheaper, because it's been around for a few years, maybe I'll go pick it up in the near future. Or, I mean, maybe I'll just wait a little bit longer and just see how low they drop this baby.
Yeah.
I would like to go back and play Mortal Kombat X though, because that's actually supposed to be one of the best ones, and I just have not gotten around to it.
Yeah. I think I'd go back and play Armageddon because I never really got the chance to play that so much. Like I said, I think I played it at somebody's house or something at one point, but uh,
Yeah,
I never had it.
I would go back to Trilogy, and I would probably also go
A
back
trilogy's
to
amazing. I'll go back to that any day and just play it for fun.
yeah, I would also go back to Deadly Alliance or Deception. Either of those games were awesome.
Yeah, I think Deception is the better of those two, just because it took everything that was good about Deadly Alliance and improved it, and then added its own, good stuff too. So
Yeah, so it'd be really neat to see.
yeah,
But I don't know. Do we have anything else to really talk about other than
no,
Mortal Kombat has also spawned a comic book series,
several
a
movies.
yes, several movies for better or worse.
Well,
Um,
the first one
some
was pretty
animated
good, and
movies.
then the second one was not so good.
Yeah, they at least got that at least the first one was
I've heard
as good as
rumors.
it should have been.
I heard rumors, and I don't know how true this is that they basically spent so much money on the first movie, on the special effects, that the studio didn't want to give them as much money for the second one, and so that's why it wasn't as good.
That
If I
would make
remember correctly,
sense.
it
It's
was like
probably also
Goro's arms or something cost so much money to make. I
uh,
forget what it was exactly, but it was something that was really expensive, and the studio
I
just
could
didn't
s-
want to
I
cough
could
up that
see
much
his
money.
I could see it because Goro was largely stop motion animated, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that would make sense if that's what it was.
Yeah,
But it's just also very silly that I mean, go figure. The studio's like, "Oh, people like this. We can't give you more money."
yeah,
And then they wonder why the second one is terrible. Wait,
yeah.
oh, what do you mean we can't hire any of the actors except for Johnny Cage, who dies right away? Like,
Well, I think Liu Kang, the guy who played Liu Kang, came
yeah, they
back
got
also.
no, they had Robin Shue. They were
Yeah,
like, okay, we have a budget for the lead, and did we have the same Sonya Blade? I don't remember.
no, no. The
Okay.
original Son of Blade was actually the the actress that played Veronica Vaughn in Billy Madison.
Yes, yes, I know. I know. My crush for her got deeper as I saw her in Mortal Kombat,
Yeah,
and no, and also we had Christopher Lambert just wasn't there as Raiden because I'm sure he was too expensive. Where they just got
yeah,
that other guy who was terrible.
yeah, yeah. The other guy was not good, and they like changed the way Raiden looked completely, and they had some stupid explanation in the movie, if I remember correctly. He's like, "Oh, well, I'm trying to look more human or some shit." It was
Yeah.
something so phoned in and dumb of why he
Yes.
looked different.
Yeah, so he just gets a haircut just to
Yeah,
fit in. Okay,
yeah,
because normal people don't have long hair, I guess. especially in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just very stupid. But I don't know. They and the box office flop showed, and then it took a long time for them to even get another Mortal Kombat movie, which they now have the more recent one, which it's fine.
Mm.
I didn't hate it, but it wasn't amazing. I
I
the
didn't watch it. I heard good. I heard it was okay.
That's how I felt. It was okay. It was good. It did good enough to make a second movie. I'm gonna watch the second movie. I don't know if
Yeah.
I would probably watch the second one as a matinee, or I might just wait for it to go on streaming.
Carl Urban is Johnny Cage. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Everybody wishes that it was The Miz.
Yeah,
It should have been The Miz. Carl Urban would have been a better Kano, but I think they kill him in the first one.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he's fine, but The Miz is real life Johnny Cage.
yeah.
So I don't know why you don't get him. But okay.
Oh no, Kano's in this one.
Oh, maybe they're doing a time travel thing in this too. Who
Who
knows?
knows?
Anyway, the best Mortal Kombat live action thing. And I think we should also just do another episode, like not even just the Mortal Kombat spin-offs, but also another episode of the Mortal Kombat cinematic stuff.
Yeah.
The animation, the animated movie included, animated movies and cartoon series
Hmm.
included. I did have a VHS of Mortal Kombat of the TV show when I was a kid, and that
Oh yeah.
was one of the cooler ones. Yeah.
Mortal Kombat followed the pattern of '90s cartoons, where they made a kids cartoon based off of something that was totally inappropriate for children.
Yes, they did.
There was
Um,
several in the
yeah.
'90s. Toxic Avenger had a cartoon, which the movie is not a children's movie by any stretch of the imagination. So
Have we done that one? I don't think we have.
no, we should do Toxic Avenger. We
Okay.
never did.
All right. So we'll have to maybe we could make that our summer part of our summer run.
Maybe we'll get Lloyd Kaufman on the show.
Oh my god, that'd be so funny. He might do it.
He
I
would.
mean, I could probably find his house by Central Park.
I'm sure you could.
I mean, it's the only one with the Toxic Avenger knocker, so the um oh gosh, it would be really funny. Anyway, so we'll get to the other we'll do two separate episodes on Mortal Kombat at some point down the road. Not back to back, but we'll do them eventually. But the best live action thing that ever happened with Mortal Kombat is Mortal Kombat Legacy. It was a YouTube series that a
Hmm.
lot of people thought were leading up to to a Mortal Kombat movie, and we never got it, or a Mortal Kombat TV series that we never got. But you gotta watch this thing if you haven't seen it. Mortal Kombat Legacy is the best non-video game Mortal Kombat thing ever.
Yeah.
It's just perfect
Yeah, I remember
because
watching a couple episodes
they
when it first came out, and it was actually really good.
they tried to ground it in reality, and
Yes.
they made much of it very believable.
Yeah.
So they did a great job, whoever it was that did this. So
I like the
maybe
way
we'll
that they explained Reptile. Like it was like he was a regular guy that had some kind of weird genetic disease that made his skin all scaly and stuff, and that's why he
yeah,
became Reptile. It was really interesting the way they did it.
yeah, but they did a very good job. So just a shout out to that. It's just I don't think that there's anything else that I could really touch on at this point. I mean, we didn't talk about every character or name which ones are our favorite. Well, I guess we kind of did. I mean, Rain is my
Yeah.
favorite because it's a giant Prince reference,
Oh
and
yeah, Purple Rain.
yeah, well, he is a prince too.
Oh really?
Yeah, he's an Edenian prince. But there's plenty of memorable characters. I know we didn't really name much of them,
Yeah,
but
Scorpion was always my go-to. Scorpion or Sub-Zero
yeah,
were my two.
they're usually the first ones that I will play with. When a new game comes out, they're usually my first go to, and then as I unlock others, I eventually find my main. One of the more recent ones that I've liked is Aaron Black. He's pretty cool. The gunslinger guy.
Oh
Scarlet is
yeah.
fucking awesome.
I liked Kenshi a
The
lot too. I
Bloodbender. Yes, Kenshi was one of the best PlayStation era ones,
Yeah,
or
I used to play
PS2
Kenshi a
era.
lot. on the PS2 era games.
Yeah. And also I'm trying to think of I can't now. I had the name in my head, now it's gone. But there's just a Nightwolf was just another one of the ones that I would
Yeah,
go to a lot. And we also didn't even talk about the various other fatality adjacent things, the babalities, which turns your opponent into a baby,
and friendship, which was
friendship.
just something
Yes.
friendly. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was hilarious because they literally added that to the game as a response to the criticism for the extreme violence. So they're like, okay, we're gonna put a thing where you turn your opponent to a baby, and then also a thing where you give them a present or something.
Yeah. And then of course there's the animalities, which I always wish that they would just do more of and just leave that in every game. It's
Yeah,
just
the
super
animalities are
fun.
cool too.
Yeah, like, they just turn into an animal of for whatever reason, and it's never explained how or why they can do this, but they just do. Sometimes it makes sense with the character, sometimes it doesn't matter, and it's just hilarious to see what they do, and they just they just kill somebody as an animal. It's funny.
Yeah.
In the more recent ones that they're DLC fatalities, which I think is bullshit, but they're holiday themed fatalities,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
which is just pretty funny and also really messed up. The Thanksgiving one is always just really messed up. It always has something to do with force feeding somebody dinner and they just explode or vomit and
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
It's but they always do silly things like that. And I just can't imagine what it takes, what goes through everybody. Like I wish I could be in the room to see the fatality creation process.
Yeah.
Like, they must just be laughing hysterically or watching horror movie kills and just getting inspiration from that stuff, or just saying,
Yeah.
"How what have we done before, and how can we make that worse? How can we just make this even more gruesome than the last time?" And it must just be really funny to just watch, to just see these guys just throwing ideas around, and this is just a serious board meeting where they're just pitching ways to kill someone.
Yeah.
It must be the best part of the job.
Oh, I'm sure. Because coming up with like all the different things and yeah, it's just I'm sure it's just a fun like bouncing off ideas and oh, what can we do next? Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, or somebody just it must start with somebody's idea, and then and then somebody else snowball, and then somebody else builds on that, and somebody
Yeah,
else builds on that, and
yeah,
it probably goes around where it's probably just starts as, oh, so the end game is we want him to hit someone with an we want I don't know, we want this person to get eaten by piranhas, right? We want this
yeah,
person to get eaten by piranhas. And then somebody said, okay, so how do we work backwards? They probably work backwards from what the finish is or what the payoff is. And then getting, they're probably building the gruesome backwards.
yeah,
And then it's probably, okay, well, what if they uppercut them? And then it's, well, what if they uppercut them onto a pit of spikes? What if what if the pit of spikes is actually on the ceiling? What if they slide off? What if they're still alive and their eyeball gets stuck to the ceiling and well, what if they're hanging, or what if for a second they're hanging off the pit spike on the ceiling by their eyeball
hmm
while they're still alive and they're feeling everything? Okay. And what if underneath, what if as they're just suspended by their eyeball, the other person is bringing out a kiddie pool, like a child swimming pool, and then what if they run backwards and they're lining it up with this? They're lining it up to be under the person who is being held over, but who is suspended by their eyeball that's
mm,
been impaled on the pit. What if they're positioning it in a way, and then they come back with a bag of piranhas? Wait, what if we show them going to the store and buying the piranhas and paying the clerk and then coming back. What if they kill the clerk too? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Then they come back after this drawn out thing. What if they stop to get ice cream on the way back? That's great. Okay, so they come back with this bag of piranhas and the ice cream, and the other person is still alive and they're suspended still by the eyeball, but now there's a buzzard that's picking at it.
Mm.
So they're looking down with one eyeball at this piranha tank that the other person's filling up, and the other eyeball just can't do anything, but it's still kind of moving in a weird way. It's fixated on seeing the buzzard pick at it. So the other eye is moving, so the active eye is moving back and forth, so you get this really silly visual. And then finally, as the buzzard gets right there, the other person just gets tired of it and they throw a ninja star up. It kills the buzzard, and it also nicks the person clean by their eyeball thread, and then they fall in and they miss the piranha pit, and then the other person, and then the other character just kind of looks at the audience and shrugs like, I tried. And the other person just bleeds out, and the payoff is a non-payoff. And then they called it the aristocrats, and the
Oh
guy
my
takes a
god,
bow. I
that's complicated.
Yeah. All right, that's my version of the aristocrats, guys. Mortal Kombat. Gotta love it. Thank you for getting us to 150.
Yes, thank you, everybody,
I got no more use for this guy.
and hopefully be 150 more.
Yes. All right, folks. Well, this has been Why Does This Exist? I have been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.
Over here.